Been a little while since I talked about Final Fantasy, huh? In fact, since that War Mech video, I've played and know a lot more about the series. I was originally thinking about doing a video on some other super bosses from Final Fantasy like Tetsukyojin from Final Fantasy II or Omega from Final Fantasy V, but I didn't really end up having enough to say about them. Nah, instead my mind kept wandering back to that first game, and one specific aspect about it: the bonus dungeons. Introduced in the Dawn of Souls remake of Final Fantasy I, what was initially a small footnote in my original playthrough became something I couldn't stop thinking about after completing them. Not only are they a really cool addition to the game, but the atmosphere here is something I really wasn't expecting to be as interesting as it was to me. So, if you will let me indulge, I want to talk about these bonus dungeons and just what it is about them that's so cool, man. After completing each of the 4 main dungeons in Dawn of Souls, those being the Earth Cave, Mount Gulg, the Sunken Shrine, and the Flying Fortress, you'll get a short cutscene of a statue in some unknown location shattering, revealing an entrance behind it. These entrances lead to Final Fantasy I's bonus dungeons, and this bonus content is officially known as the Soul of Chaos. The bonus dungeons are very different in structure to Final Fantasy I's own. They're significantly longer, house exclusive enemies, have a lot of very unique floor designs, and are home to some of the most powerful bosses in the game. Yes, even more powerful than War Mech. Each of these bosses takes the form of a legacy boss from an earlier Final Fantasy game, including the Cloud of Darkness's Fuckhouse Quartet, Golbez's Archfiend Friend Circle, the Blowjob Brothers and their awkward buddies, and whoever they could hire for cheap from Final Fantasy VI. These are all neat little references in their own right, especially the Final Fantasy III bosses, since those hadn't had a Super Nintendo-style sprite up to that point. But the main thing that grabbed me were the floors in between. Let's start off with the first bonus dungeon, Earthgift Shrine. It's the shortest of the 4, being only 5 floors long, but each floor layout has something interesting to say about it. To start, there are 2 floors that didn't really stand out to me at first, until I came back after playing Final Fantasy III. These are one-to-one recreations of rooms in Altar Cave, the starting area in that game, which is a pretty cool and niche detail. Then there's the desert floor, which as the name implies, is a huge desert that loops on all sides and is easy to get lost in. It almost kind of feels like a Yuminiki map, with the way that the exit is only marked by one small landmark that can be pretty hard to navigate to. I also like that there's just a huge desert somewhere deep underground in this cave. Sorta makes me think of the Twin Mold Arena in Majora's Mask. There's actually a lot of floors like this that don't make any logical sense in the context of being in a cave, and these are usually my favorites. Speaking of which, the last floor before the bosses is a dark purple forest, filled to the brim with enemy NPCs. I know the blue-faced soldier sprite is just supposed to be a stand-in for monsters, but I like to imagine they actually look like that at first, before morphing into a monster when you try talking to them. I don't know, just sort of my headcanon. This floor can be kind of a pain in the ass though. It's really long and winding, and while the battles aren't hard, there's a lot of them, and they can get really tedious. It doesn't help that if you're going through these dungeons to complete the bestiary, you'll have to go through 4 different times to get each of the Final Fantasy III bosses recorded, and the Dark Forest is guaranteed to be one of the floors you'll have to go through. Next up is the Hellfire Chasm, which is a step up from Earthgift Shrine in terms of length. 10 floors with significantly tougher foes, and once you start, you can't leave without some resistance. Yeah, these bonus dungeons are one-way entrances, and the only way to get out are to either beat at least one of the bosses, die, or reload a save. A rookie mistake, and one that I made in my first playthrough of the PSP version, is for you to accidentally wander into Hellfire Chasm while exploring the Dragon Caves, not know how to leave, and getting your ass beat by the enemies that are way stronger than you. In terms of floor layouts, there's nothing all that special at first, until you get a couple floors in. You go from a fiery cavern filled with lava to a bright, cheery overworld complete with a sea you can sail on. One thing I only recently realized was that in the overworld, your character is only able to move at walking speed, since it's supposed to portray how quickly they'd realistically move through such large areas. The size of the character is just a representation to make them easier to see. In the Hellfire Chasm overworld maps, however, you're able to move at full speed, which makes me imagine that your character is actually that size, tromping around a diorama-sized world. The fact that there's such a place in a cave like this is really interesting to me. It makes me think of those garden sublevels from Pikmin 2. It's a very surreal setting that really got me thinking. Like, is it just an illusion being created by Garland or whoever's sealed in these dungeons? I don't know, just something to think about. Then, there are 2 more floors of note, which take on the appearance of the waterfall cave. No random encounters here, instead there are these sparkly tiles that always give an encounter, as well as a boatload of NPCs wandering around, all saying some variation of, "Go back, don't proceed any further." One of them even says a Homestar Runner reference at us. You have to carefully navigate around them, being careful not to step on the sparklies, and this feels like another floor that could potentially be an illusion created by one of the Archfiends, meant to discourage the Warriors of Light into giving up. The slowness of the people down here can really make it annoying to get by sometimes, though. They walk in consistent and always moving paths, but if you miss the cycle, you have to wait for them to walk all the way back again. Still, this is one of my favorite floors in terms of atmosphere. It's a little creepy, but in a really cool way. The next bonus dungeon is Lifespring Grotto, and this is where the floor count starts to get silly. 20 whole floors, capped off with the 2 strongest opponents in the game, surpassing even the bosses in the final bonus dungeon. Typically people do this one last, I know I sure did, and it certainly doesn't help that you have to do it twice, once to fight Omega and once again to fight Shinryu. Even so, this one has some of my favorite floors so far, starting with the Flooded Village. You have to use a boat to get around this town that's been submerged in water, and I really like the idea of an abandoned underground town within a dungeon. I know I've been implying that these sublevels are just illusions created by the bosses that live inside, but I like to believe that this one was actually real and they just decided to slip it in with the others while they were conjuring up these dungeons for our heroes. Maybe long ago there was a civilization that lived down here, but water from an underground aqueduct flooded the place and they had to evacuate. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum is the floor where there's a bunch of dancers that you have to navigate as they circle through tight corridors, and ends off with a cool Mario Maker level.
Magic missile! Magic missile! Magic missile! Magic missile!
This one's almost definitely an illusion, but it's still really unique, and the dancers have a lot of pretty entertaining dialogue. I also like the library floor. It's reminiscent of the Library of Ancients from Final Fantasy V, what with all the scholars wandering around. One floor I hated, however, was this one where you have to walk on these pathways that fade in and out of being visible, and if you misstep once, just once, your ass gets sent all the way back to the start of the floor. One last thing I want to mention about this dungeon, I know I haven't really been talking about the boss floors since, yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say about them, but I have to make an exception for my man Gilgamesh. He's gotten lost in the Lifespring Grotto looking for an important sword, probably Excalibur, and all the mermaids on this sublevel call him a weird man holding a halberd. None of the other boss floors have any kind of story to them, with one exception we'll talk about later, so I find it really cute that they did something special for Gilgamesh. It's very in line with how they treat him in Final Fantasy V. The final bonus dungeon I want to talk about today is Whisperwind Cove, and if you thought 20 floors for Lifespring Grotto was a lot, try 40! 40 damn floors! This one's really long, I know I had to take several breaks during it. On the upside, however, Whisperwind Cove has some of the coolest floors of any of the dungeons we've seen so far. I love the sun-bathed floating continent sublevel. There's not a whole lot to say about it other than it's just really pretty, and I love the atmosphere here. I'd definitely sleep in this place. Speaking of pretty places, one floor is a graveyard for all the monsters you've slain, and you get to hear what they're thinking about in the afterlife. Some of them even challenge you to rematches, but since they still have the same stats as before, they just get steamrolled even harder. Whisperwind Cove also has a handful of sublevels that are like full entire towns. There's one where you have to play hide and seek with a bunch of kids as if they don't know that they're living in one of the most dangerous dungeons in the game. There's no enemy encounters here, all the house entrances just lead to other houses, and it adds up to a really surreal atmosphere that I enjoy a lot. Another town sublevel is a town full of mages, and acts as a sort of rest floor. You can buy basically every black and white magic spell here, as well as some really good mage equipment, albeit for some absurd prices. Then there's Feyholm, a village full of nothing but fairies like the one that gave you the Oxy Ale. Talking to them can either give you a full heal or reduce your HP to just 1. Considering there's still enemy encounters here, it's best to be careful. One of my favorite town floors, however, is the Robot Village, which is a desolate town inhabited by nothing but a handful of robots, one of which requests that you find their friends' missing parts so you can repair them. The robots are already a super uncommon sight in Final Fantasy I, only appearing in the Mirage Tower and briefly in the Flying Fortress. But if you've seen my other videos, I'm sure you know how much I love seeing more of these guys. By far the most interesting town floor, however, is the Zombie Village. As I said before, boss floors aren't usually all that interesting in these bonus dungeons, but there's another exception for the floor where you fight the Phantom Train. It's cursed this town and its inhabitants to be undead, and the only way to break the curse is to destroy the train. Maybe it's because there's just nothing else quite this morbid in the game, but the segment was honestly a little bit unsettling to me when I first played it. And again, it has that surreal illusion feel that makes me feel like this is Death Gaze trying to pull some psychological horror shit on our heroes. Though I was complaining about the length of Whisperwind Cove earlier, I think this is one aspect where the extreme length sort of does contribute to the atmosphere, at least for me. It makes me feel the same way that the Historical Society in Silent Hill 2 did. I love the concept of a deep, endless feeling dungeon that progressively gets more unreal and strange the further you go in. The last couple floors I want to talk about are some funnier ones. First off, there's a cave full of beavers, which is a reference to an area in Final Fantasy II that I like. You know, guys speak beaver and all that. Then there's a place that's reminiscent of Mount Dwergar, being full of mining dwarves. To progress, you need to talk to each of them, find out what problem they're having, and get the right item from another dwarf to give them so they'll give you something else. It's pretty cute, and a nice respite from the other more brutal floors. That's all I really had to say about these bonus dungeons. I love how weird and out there they get with the concepts of what a dungeon can even be. That surreal atmosphere really resonated with me, and I wish more games try to be as unique with their dungeons. Now, I know there's a 5th bonus dungeon exclusive to the PSP version of Final Fantasy 1, but I haven't gotten around to doing that one yet since I've only 100%ed the GBA version. I've heard it's cool and has a boss that has like 20 different forms based on what bosses you defeated or something, but I don't have enough first-hand experience to talk about it. Alright, next time we're gonna talk about, Go-Go from Final Fantasy V.